Everyone, Shalom Aleichem. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, family, it's a great honor to be speaking at a class, a talk connected with a very beautiful soul that was prematurely taken from us, Rezel Zucker, Allah HaShalom. Frankly, it's always difficult for all of us, including myself, though I'm not the immediate family. Yet, when you see a mother and a wife and a beautiful person with so many relations and friends, as we saw the outpouring after her untimely passing, taken from us in a senseless way, there's really no words. And it's those of us that have a little sensitivity and empathy find it inadequate to express ourselves because it's just simply unfathomable. Like, why would God do something like that? And we don't have an answer. One of the rebbes, I don't think it was a Chabad rebbe, one of the rebbes was once approached by a person who had a tragedy of a lost family member at a premature age. And the Rebbe told him, I don't have answers for you, but I can cry with you. And in some mysterious way, that has power. That has power because we connect. Answers are not always the solution to our challenges. The Rebbe once said about faith, amunah, faith, and trust. He said, when it comes to faith, faith is a situation where an answer doesn't make it stronger and a question doesn't make it weaker. So there's some deeper, mysterious force inside of us that allows us to come together and honor the memory and honor the neshama, the soul of someone who has passed. And we do so through positive actions, through learning. I commend you for this program. I see week after week, a weekly class in honor of Rezel and all those that are participating and all those that will participate right now from all over the world. And then later to listen to this again. Modern technology allows us to connect in ways that we once could not connect. And especially in this age of the pandemic, it's brought people together that were never brought together. So every challenge has its opportunities. So again, it's an honor for me to share a few words in her honor, in her memory. And when we do so, the neshama, the soul of the person who is studying in her honor, is definitely here listening to us and participating with us, together with all the other neshama souls. You see, we're little human beings that live inside of a box called the body. And we know very little. We may think we know a lot, but when we're faced with things that seem completely impossible to comprehend and wrap our head around, we suddenly realize that there's a bigger picture. And then we stand in humility, recognizing there are things we don't understand. And that is a strength. That's not a weakness. We don't need to have control over everything. If anything that has been taught us during this period, in the last few months, is that our schedules, our summer plans, and our children's plans, and our work, and everything we had all figured out, we suddenly realize one little microbe upended and disrupted it all. And yet we're here, thank God. Yes, there have been very precious souls taken from us, but we are here to talk about it. And that tells us that control and understanding everything is not the key to life. The key to life is far, far deeper, which we're going to be speaking about. Since this is the week of Parsha Shlach, the chapter which we read, one of the great stories, one of the classic stories, one of the classic tragedies in the Torah, in the Bible, and that is the story of the Meraglim, the scouts. Let's begin with that because I think it really sets the tone for a tremendous lesson in life. The Rebbe taught us that everything has to be a lesson in life. Everything has to be relevant, applied to our lives, not just a theoretical event that happened thousands of years ago. So here we have the story that Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses sends the Meraglim. They are the scouts to scout out Israel, the promised land, to see what's the best way to enter, what's the best way to, if there'll be a battle, how to fight, and so on, where the strongholds are, where the weak points. Scouts, what they call spies. And they were good people. They were the best of the best. As Rashi says, they were pure intent. They were the leaders of the tribes. And yet something went terribly wrong. They go off on their mission, and they return, and they give a terrible report that this is a land that, no, it's a hostile land. It's a difficult land. It's a land that consumes its inhabitants. Eretz echeles yeshveha. We cannot conquer this land. And of course, doing so, they incite and instigate the entire people. And they cry all night because they came out of Egypt with a promise. That was their dream. Their lifetimes, the lifetimes of their parents and grandparents, all the way back to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, was that we would go to a promised land. And here suddenly, all these dreams have been shattered. So it was a very sad night. It was the first Tisha B'Av. The saddest day of the Jewish calendar begins that night when the Jews cried due to the scouts' negative report. So here's the big question. What did they do wrong? Weren't they sent to go on a mission and come back with a report? And they did exactly that. They came back with a report. What do you want from them? Yes, it was not a good report. But that was why they were sent. They were sent on a mission. Let us know what's going on. They told you. They said. So what did they do wrong? The answer is very simple and very profound, and a lesson to us in life. They made one major flaw, major blunder. They were sent to figure out how to conquer the land, how to enter, what's the best way, how to do it. They were never asked whether to do it. And they came back with a conclusion, which was not their mission. They came back and said, we cannot do it. That is a grave sin, because God said you can. This is my promised land. I promised it to you. I promised it to your forefathers and foremothers, to the patriarchs and matriarchs. So you definitely can. I just asked you to figure out how, not whether. That little difference is the difference between life and death. Because the first one is how. That means we're here. No matter what the challenge, we can do it. We're confident that we can do it. And whether or not is not up to us. So no matter what happens in life, no one ever asked us whether we should be born and put into this world. So yes, life can be very challenging and very difficult. Here we are. Look, a mother, a wife has left little children. I don't need to elaborate. Everyone knows the tragedy of that. Their lives forever will be changed. We all believe and hope and pray for Mashiach immediately, reuniting with their mother, reuniting with all the neshamas that are not here with us physically. But meanwhile, terrible, terrible story. So you can say, you know what? I can't do it. I can't do it. That's not the Meraglim. The scouts tell us you always can do it. It's just a question of how. The weather is not up to us. What's up to us is how to do it. And that's a tremendous lesson in life on so many different levels, which we're going to talk about right now, which is how we build resilience. We titled this class, We're Stronger in the Broken Places, 3 ways to build resilience. And these are 3 ways that are time-tested over 3,800 years. 3,800 years. There's nothing longer than the Jewish people on this earth. And we've been around and we've experienced everything, every possible tragedy and challenge, every persecution, every form of slavery, genocides, holocausts, inquisitions, crusades, you name it, to list all the tragedies. And what happened with this people? We're here, not only here to tell the story, we are thriving. In a completely disproportionate way, the Jewish people have an impact on this world, though they're the fewest of nations. Based on their numbers, our influence is far, far more than our numbers. So what's the secret? What's the secret of such success under duress? Most of our history has been so difficult. And it's an answer not just collectively for the people, the Jewish people, it's also an answer for each individual, including all of us who've been affected by Rezel's passing, untimely passing, and by other tragedies, unfortunately, that we've seen recently and in general. So there are three key elements, if you study it, three key elements to this formula that every one of us can replicate and can recreate in our lives. And based all on this chapter, the chapter that we never ask whether we can do it or not, or ask how we can do it. I want to open with a story that I heard from Rabbi Zalman Posner. Zalman Posner, Olav Shalom, was a shliach going back, the Friedrich Rebbe's emissary, going back to the mid-40s, one of the first shluchim in America. He went to different cities, but he ended up in Nashville, Tennessee. That was his place until he passed away. He told me the story. It was one sukkah. We were sitting together in the sukkah, and we we're talking. And he said to me the following. He said, the first time I ever was sent to go on some mission, I was a student. I was a young student in the yeshiva in 770 Eastern Parkway in Brooklyn and Crown Heights. The Friedrich Rebbe, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, who passed away in Tufshin at 70 years ago. And then his son-in-law, our Rebbe, assumed leadership. And he called me in. And he said, I want you to go. I think he said it was Chicago. I'm not positive. Somewhere in the Midwest. I think it was Chicago. Not a permanent. Go there for a few weeks during the summer. This was the first time, he says to me, I ever was sent. And I was somewhat tentative. I never did this. I don't know what to do. I didn't have confidence. And the Friedrich Rebbe says, sensed that I was tentative. I was like cautious. I was not like excited about it. So he said, the Friedrich Rebbe looked at me, and this is how he told me the story exactly. He said, remember, this was after the Friedrich Rebbe, previous Rebbe, had a stroke. So it was difficult for him to speak. And it was hard to understand. Those that were not familiar with the Friedrich Rebbe's speech, it was hard to understand. So there was usually a secretary in the room that would help translate or explain the Rebbe's words. But he said the Rebbe also, additionally, this was the first time I ever heard this, he said the Rebbe also used his hands. He was very demonstrative with his hands, which helped understand what he's saying, because he used his hands, and then the hands help understand the message. And this is what the Friedrich Rebbe told me. Listen to this. He says, and I'll never forget it till this day. He repeated to me, and after he told it to me, I'll never forget it. And I hope you'll never forget it. So the Friedrich Rebbe said to him in calm, patient language, he says, in Yiddish, I'll say it, I'll translate it into the English. And I'll say the Yiddish and translate it. He says, when a soul has to come down below from heaven, when the soul is coming down, a new life is being born. Will sie nicht gehen. The soul doesn't want to come down below. Why? Why doesn't it want to come down? So the Friedrich Rebbe said, weil eben is lichtig warm, above, in the heavenly worlds, the spiritual worlds, it's lichtig, it's illuminated and warm, it's bright and warm. Und unten, down below on earth, is kalt und finster. It's cold and dark. So why would a neshama want to go? Why would a soul want to go from a beautiful, bright, warm environment to a dark, hostile, cold environment? So Friedrich Rebbe made with his hand, was tut man? So what do you do? The soul doesn't want to go. He says, me haste. The soul is commanded. Your mission is to go down below. And then he said, the Friedrich Rebbe took his finger. Watch my finger. This is exactly what he said. And he said, Mehez the neshama, the soul is commanded. And the Rebbe started making with his finger going down, 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 very slowly like this. He says the finger was trembling a bit. And he was watching the finger of the Friedrich Rebbe go like this, like this. He says, that the soul is told to go down from a place that was bright and warm. And he goes down, down, down. The Friedrich Rebbe touched almost the table like that, trembling. And says to go down to a place that's dark and cold. And then the Friedrich Rebbe took his hands and said, und dorten soll man machen warm und lichtig. And there, in that cold and dark place, the mission is to illuminate it and make it a warm and bright environment. So he understood the message very clearly, and he went, and he continued to go until he ended up on his shlichus, on his mission in Tennessee, in Nashville. He says, we all go through life. There are many challenges. I've had my challenges. We have losses. We have deaths. We have different tragic situations. We have setbacks, disappointments. Things happen. Life is not easy. God blesses us. It's a little easier, but everybody's going to have their challenge. He says, you cannot imagine how many times I thought the Frierdiker Rebbe's finger, and I felt I was connected to that finger. The Frierdiker Rebbe was giving me his finger, saying, I'm going with you. And the finger, always I reminded when I was in the darkest, coldest places, the Frierdiker Rebbe's finger kept me strong, because I remember what he said, that that's the mission, to go from a bright and warm place to go down. And with the finger, holding on to the Rebbe's finger, I felt the strength and the ability to make it happen. And it helped me in many situations. And this I heard firsthand from Rabbi Zalman. And I saw how it impacted him. It was like he lived with it. And the Frierdiker Rebbe surely understood the significance of what he was telling him. But he demonstrated with his finger. It wasn't just a talk. It wasn't just a philosophy, an idea of Yeridas HaNeshama B'Guf. The soul comes down below. Yeridas Chaliyah. The descent is in order to greater ascent. It was a personal experience. And Rabbi Zalman said to me, I felt the Frierdiker Rebbe was also describing his own life, which was the Frierdiker Rebbe went through much anguish, through his own imprisonment, through the tortures, through the challenges in the former Soviet Union, then later in Poland, and even in America, health issues, difficult life. But that's the mission. So the first lesson in resilience, and not to do the mistake of the Meraglim, they did not understand that finger lesson. They said, no, we can't do it. That was not the question whether you can or not. You for sure can. The question is how. You are told to go. Of course, it's more comfortable to be in the environment, spiritual environment. There's no challenges of parnas, of livelihood, of health, of other limitations and other difficulties in this hostile world. A soul without a body doesn't have any challenges. But that's not the purpose. The purpose is to go down. So lesson number one is understanding and appreciating deep in our guts that there's a bigger picture than you and I. Our minds are limited. There's a bigger picture. Understanding the principle of divine providence. Divine providence means we don't understand all the elements of it, but we know that every part of our lives, wherever we are, there's a reason why we're there. This includes good times and even sometimes times that don't look so good. It's all part of our trajectory, a part of a narrative. Think of it like a story. You're reading a book. You're reading a long story. And parts of it are very beautiful, very uplifting, very life-affirming. And then you come to a chapter where things are not going so well. And if you're reading well, you're reading it, you are connecting and bonding with the story, and you really feel disturbed. Look what's happening. Everything was going so well, and now suddenly. And let's say you get so disturbed you can't move on. You put down the book and say, I can't handle this. It's too sad, too tragic. It's too painful. And you put down the book. So what would you tell someone if they told you that? You'd say, pick up the book and continue reading. The story's not over. The narrative continues. And you continue reading and you see there's a twist and a turn and a plot. And you see, hey, you know what? There's a longer story. The first most important thing, and this is what the Jewish people as a collective and as individuals always know, there's a bigger story. And we don't always see the next chapter. We see the piece of the story that we're experiencing right now. We don't see the whole book, but we know there is a larger narrative. That's what kept the Jews strong, even in the harshest of times in Egypt, after the Babylonian exile, after the Roman exile, during the thousands of years, almost 2,000 years since the destruction of the temple. It all came down to they knew there's a longer story. I once was speaking to a Holocaust survivor. I can tell you who it is even. Elie Wiesel. He was close friends with my father. After my father passed away, I became friendly with him, friendlier. We used to talk. So I asked him once, I said, is it true that during the time when the Jews were in the camps, concentration camps, that when they went to the gas chambers, some of them would sing a song called Ani Mamin, Bamuna Shlema, I believe with complete faith in the coming of Mashiach. Even if he tarries, even if he's delayed, I continue to believe. So he said, we were not near the gas chambers because they kept us apart. They didn't want to confuse us. But I can tell you, on a daily basis, that song was sung, other songs, prayers, the Shema, Kaddish. It was a constant. It was a constant thing in the middle of the night, in the morning, different times, different people, especially when there was a holiday. So I said, with all respect, I need to ask a question. I'm just an American spoiled brat. I've never go through anything like that in my life. How did the Jews have that type of presence and composure and strength? I mean, they had every right to be angry at God because they were killed and they were targeted because they're Jews. Where is God in all of this? Why did God not protest? Why did God not stop it? They had every right to be furious. Men, women, and children, innocent. Only because they're Jewish, only because we were chosen by you, we were chosen by the Nazis to be killed. So they had every right to be angry. The darkest moment in history. Complete silence, being completely for Haster Astapane. God's face was completely concealed. Worse than concealed. That the Saint Yisrael could argue, Ayeh Lekechem, the haters of the Jews could say, yeah, where is your God? Where is he now when you need him? And yet they had that type of presence and strength to sing a song, I believe, saying God's praises, Iskadol v'Iskada, Shmei Rabba. It's like insane. Someone from an outside would say, that's now? You have every right to be angry. Why are you singing God's praises? And he responded to me, as I've heard from a number of people who've been in a similar situation. He said, first of all, don't be so surprised. Jews are insane. Okay. So after the joke of that, he said, well, this was the point. No, they were not in denial. They were not crazy. They were making a declaration for history, for generations, forever. The same declaration that Jews made from the beginning of time. And what is that declaration? You can take our bodies, but you can't take our souls. You can take our lives, but you can't take our faith. That will live on even when we are no longer here. And if it won't be us, it will be our children. If it won't be our children, it will be our grandchildren. But we will march to the Geula, to the redemption. The end of the story is going to be our victory. So it wasn't denial. It wasn't just blind faith. It was a statement. This is how they defied the Nazis. They couldn't control the fact that their lives would be taken, their physical lives. But they totally could control whether their spiritual lives will be taken, whether their faith would be touched. And when they were singing with that defiance, with that absolute confidence, unwavering confidence that we will triumph. And today, when you go to Berlin, you go to Germany, despite the fact that a third of our people, 6 million of 18 million Jews, were decimated. And you go to the Brandenburg Gate, where Yamach Shemai, may his name be erased, Hitler stood with his hundreds of thousands of legions. Go there, Hanukkah, tell me what you see, where Hitler stood. You'll see a Hanukkah menorah. Yeah, Hanukkah menorah. And you'll see little boys, Jewish boys and girls running around, going to schools, yeshivas, tzitzis, yarmulkes, lighting candles, Shabbos. While the grandchildren or the children of the Nazis have changed their names and hide their identities. So yes, we paid a heavy price, but who prevailed? Is the story over? No, it's a narrative. The Baal Shem Tov gives a beautiful analogy. It's called the Schwindeltreppe analogy. Schwindeltreppe. You ever hear of Schwindeltreppe? What's Schwindeltreppe? In Yiddish, it means swindling staircase. Why is it? It's called a spiral staircase. Why is it called swindling? Schwindel. A swindler is a swindler. You know why? Because when you walk up a regular staircase, it could be many steps, but you ultimately reach a destination. And you can see the destination from a distance. When you walk up a spiral staircase, you don't see the destination. Every time you have to make a full revolution, a full turn, and your back is facing the destination. And as you climb, the closer you get to the top, you're finally about to make the last turn, your face is completely in the other direction. You can convince yourself you made no progress. Says the Baal Shem Tov, this is the story of life. Life is not a straight staircase. It's a swindling. It swindles you into thinking that you haven't made any progress. You stop. You say, I haven't reached my destination. On the contrary, I look at the opposite direction. I don't even see the destination. But you're right there. Your back is right near it. So the first lesson in resilience is there's a bigger story to our lives. You need a little humility to recognize there's a bigger story. You don't see the end. I remember meeting once Leilenu, a woman who lost her husband at a young age. And we were communicating with each other. At the end of her email, she signed off. I guess she signed not just to me, I guess to everyone that she wrote to. She wrote, in the end, it will be good. If it's not good, it means it's not the end. This type of resolute confidence and absolute conviction that there's a bigger story, don't underestimate how much power that gives a person. Because you say to yourself, I don't see it all, but I know there's a bigger story. And today we don't need faith alone. 3,800 years of Jewish heart-earned experience proves it. We say in the Seder, in every generation, they arose to destroy us. And this can be physically or spiritually or psychologically or emotionally. And God saved us each time. And this faith in the promise that was made, that the story continues and the end of the story is going to be brilliant, is going to be the best ending possible, is that's what gave us strength to endure. So lesson number one is to know there's a bigger story. Is it easy? No, of course it's not easy. Especially when you're in the throes of the abyss and you're feeling the pain of loss, right in the shadow of loss. Very difficult to tell somebody then, hey, it's a bigger story. And I'm not suggesting we do. When you go visit someone's shiva call, you don't tell them, hey, it's not so bad, there's a bigger story. Obviously, that's not the first thing is that's why I opened up. The first thing we cry with you. I cry with you, empathize with you. The mystery is because God could have done it in a different way. And we have to surrender to the fact and acknowledge that this pain is so deep that no brilliant mind can speak to a crying and bleeding heart. And not to try to rationalize and explain. But if you step back and you want to so-called, in a way, describe a tool, an instrument, yes, that there's a bigger picture. And even when it's very difficult, we always hold on to that. That doesn't answer the pain, but it gives us an additional asset, an additional tool to be able to deal with everything. So why did the Meraglim not have that? Because they used their seichel. They saw a land that consumes its inhabitants. They saw giants. They saw powerful forces. And they said, we can't do it. Who were the ones that were stood out? Kolov and Yeshua were the two that did not fall into this conspiracy. And they said, no, God promised us the land, we can do it. What distinguished them? Why were they different than the others who were also kosher? They're also pure. So we're told, Kolov went to the Ma'aras HaMachpelah. He went to Hebron to pray at the resting place, at the oil of Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov. Or the Menchava, Avram and Sarah, Yitzchak and Rivka, Yaakov and Leah. Yeshua, Moshe prayed for him because he was going to be the successor. He was Layomish Metechel. He was always so bound to his great teacher Moshe. What did the prayers do? They allowed them to hold on to something bigger, like the Animamim. The Meraglim, the other scouts, were brilliant. They were very spiritual people, but because they didn't have that as they used their seichel. They calculated. This is not possible. Kol of Yeshua also saw the same thing. They also saw the formidable challenges ahead, but they had that additional element. There's a bigger picture here. because of those prayers. So it's our spiritual connections. In the words of Rabbi Meir Meprim Mishlan, when you're tied above, you don't fall below. It's when we are able to hold on to a bigger picture, to a larger narrative, and realize there's a bigger story, is tool or instrument number one. Number two, the second thing, is a rule. This is a rule I've heard repeated by the Rebbe countless times. When they were building the Mishkan, they were building the portable sanctuary in the wilderness. So Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, comes to God and says, we're building a temple for you. It's not an easy thing to do, to build a temple for God, for mortal creatures to build something for God. And God responded, Ani eini mevakesh lefikechi. Ani eini mevakesh el lefikechon. I am not asking them and you to do something that is in my capacity. I'm asking you to do something that's in your capacity, which becomes a rule in life, that there's no challenge that we're given that we don't have the strength to deal with. So point number two is that recognition that whatever happens to us, we were given resources to deal with it, or else it would not have happened. Any challenge, it means that you have deeper resources that if you dig, you'll find them. Having that confidence gives us another edge. Not just that there's a larger narrative, that we actually have the strength to endure and make it through. No one should ever know of tragedy. But if you speak to people who've gone through difficult times and you see, how did you make it through? They'll all say, I had two choices, to sink or to swim. I was once speaking to a person who lost a wife at a young age 37 years old, 5 little children. The year 1970, 1969, it was on the second day of Sukkot. And you could imagine it was not easy. Ultimately, years later, I had two choices. I was going to sink or swim. I dug deeper. I said, but how did you have the wherewithal? And he told me that when they stood up from Shiva, remember in that situation where someone passes on the second day of Sukkot, the Shiva begins after Yom Tov. So it's an odd situation. You cry when you're not through the holiday, even though it's not a time for crying, but you cry. And then conduct begins after the holiday, begins the Shiva. He says, an older chassid told me, he said to me, Reb, he said, no, that for every pekel of tzaras, for every bag of pain, of agony, of challenges, of difficulties, God also gives you a package of resources, of keiches, of abilities, strengths to deal with it. He said, that I remembered. I remember everything else that was told to me. So the second thing is knowing the vote of confidence that we have, that the mere fact that you wake up in the morning and we say, Moida'ani, we acknowledge, thank you for giving me back, turning my soul to me. You're also thanking God and saying, thank you for giving me life and giving me all that I need to deal with life. Never, ever give up on yourself, because you have everything you need to face whatever it is that's going to come your way. Now, obviously, because ein chovish mater asatme, which means no person who's tied up in fetters, like if you're tied up by rope, it's hard, you can't untie yourself. Our subjectivity doesn't always allow us to see our own strengths, which is why we need friends, we need colleagues, we need mentors, we need people who we can lean on. They will not replace us, but they give you that extra encouragement, that vote of confidence, that ability to, at times, just to vent, to be able to express yourself. So part of it is they help you also recognize the strengths that you have. So tool number 2 in resilience is knowing that you have every strength you need to face whatever it is that comes your way. Raisel's husband is now to bring up children, his own children. I'm sure he has family, loving family that will help. But nothing can replace a mother, let's be honest. So what do you say to that? You say that God gives strength to you and to other family members, not to replace, you can't replace, but in some way, another strength, an additional strength to be able to know how to behave and what to behave. And when you do it right, these children, your children will grow up unbelievable people. Not Rahmanas cases, not people who have to be mercy and pity, and look what happened to you. No, but people with self-confidence, with assurance, knowing that we have the strength. So this is a responsibility, and it's a lesson in life that no matter what happens, we rise to the occasion. No, we do not resign ourselves. We don't retreat. We don't cower in fear. We don't tremble. We're in pain. It's difficult. But we say, and you say to each other, we were given the strength and we will make it through and we will become greater people and we will honor our mother and our wife in ways that are amazing ways. We will never understand God's mysterious actions, but we will become greater people. The human spirit will shine within us, perhaps more than ever. It would not have necessarily emerged were it not for this negative event. And again, it's not a justification. It's how, not whether. We must move on, but how are we going to move on? So we don't know why, and we don't know the mysteries of why different things happen. But we know fully confident we can do whatever, we have everything that we need to make it happen. The former chief rabbi of Israel, Rabbi Yisrael Meir Lau, told me the following story. He was at the Rav at the time in 1974 in Netanya, a little north of Tel Aviv in Israel. He would later become the chief rabbi. Now his son is the chief rabbi. First time he came to America, he came in 1974, right after the Yom Kippur War. And he came to see the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He was in Yechidus in a private audience. And the Rebbe asks him in Yiddish, he says, "Was Retman, what are they talking about in Israel? What's the mood?" And the mood was not a good mood. In stark contrast to the 6-Day War, where in a miraculous 6 days, the Jews conquered 3 times the size of the original land they had, Yerushalayim, the Kosel, and so on. The euphoria was impossible to express. And with very few casualties, relatively speaking. Miracles. The Yom Kippur War, many mistakes were made. Arrogance, overconfidence, and it was not good in the beginning. After the war broke out in Yom Kippur, that's when they were attacked. Israel was attacked by its neighbors. It was not looking good. Thank God, within a few days, things turned around, but there were over 2,000 casualties in a country like Israel. That was a serious, serious number. So the mood was very down. People were very depressed. And that's what Rabbi Lau said to the Rebbe. People are asking, he said these words, Mefrekt, was wird sein? People are asking, what's going to be? Ma yiyeh. What's going to be? The way he told me the story, he says the Rebbe grabbed his wrist, Rabbi Lau's wrist, and said to him, Harav Lau, bei Eden fragt man nicht. Was wird sein? Man fragt, was geht man tun? Jews never ask, what will be? We ask, what are we going to do about it? Not ma yiyeh, ma naseh. What are we going to do? He says, I'll never forget that. And let me explain. I'll explain. The Rebbe was saying that a victim says, what's going to be? You pick up your hands. What could I do? What's going to be? As if someone else is going to write your script and destiny. The Frierdiker Rebbe said, the end of Masechta Seita, the end of the tractate, Seita talks about the signs before Mashiach comes. Many negative signs. Then it says, Ein lanu li'ishon ela Avinu shebashamayim. And there's no one to rely on except our Father in heaven. Everyone takes that to mean that after speaking about all the negative things, the chutzpah, the different things that the Talmud describes, so it's like a blessing to conclude that we have no one to rely on. Things are going to be so difficult. We have no one to rely on but God. Says the Frierdiker Rebbe, that's also part of the problem. That people will say, we can't do anything. We'll throw up our hands. There's no one to rely on but our Father in heaven. What do you mean? Your Father in heaven gave you faculties. Obviously, we have trust and faith and we rely on God. But the same God also said, you're a partner with me. Pray to me. But I've also given you tools. I've given you intelligence. I've given you emotions. I've given you faculties and abilities. I've given you the strength to deal with every challenge. So a victim asks, what will be? Not someone that has that confidence that God gave you strength. Then you say, what am I going to do? The Meraglim said, what's going to be? And they convinced the Jews to say the same. It's too powerful, this land. We can't go there. No, that's not an option. How, not whether. And then comes number 3, the third. So everyone knows the expression, trach gut wird sein gut. Think good and it will be good, a statement made by the Tzemach Tzedek to someone who had a child that was very not well. And the doctors had given up hope. Tzemach Tzedek said to him, think good and will be good. And when that happened, things turned around. So this is one of these, everyone uses this expression, but what lies behind it? Is it just some type of gimmick? Is it just like psyching you out and just think positive? Or distract yourself by thinking positive? Is it fantasy? Or is it reality? Well, when we understand the first 2 that I just described, that there's a larger narrative. There's a God that's running the show that's bigger than us. And we're part of a bigger destiny and a bigger story. And number 2, that God as well gave us all the strengths we need. So what do you think the conclusion is? Everything is ultimately positive. It may not be obvious right now. So Takud Venzaigut is not just some type of manipulation of, okay, just like, it's like you tell your children, things are really bad. You say, no, it's really good, let's just go. No. It actually means that within the story, there's goodness. We just don't see it. Within the story, there's also the strengths we need and have to deal with everything. So that ultimately leads to a positive picture. Right now, we may not see the positive. Right now, the spiral staircase may all be blacked out. We may be blinded. And yes, we cry. Even tzaddikim cry when their loved ones pass away. Shiva is not just for the blind ones. Even a tzaddik who completely connects to a soul and his whole life is chayim neshama, chayim ruchnim, also cries. I remember when the Rebbe cried for his Rebbetzin. It was very hard to see how the Rebbe mourned and grieved openly. I always wondered, how was it in 1988, Tovshin Memches, Chav Beishvat? The Rebbe was a very private person. When his mother passed away, Tovshin Chav Hei, in the beginning of 1960, in the end of 1964, Vav Tishrei, Rebbe Tzachana, it was very discreet. The Rebbe was very discreet, kept it to himself. In 1988, by in contrast, it was so open. The Rebbe grieved openly, cried openly. He moved his whole operation from the 770 to the house on President Street. Everything changed. The most obvious way, daven 3 times a day, every farbrengen v'achayit libe, and the living shall take to heart. He spoke openly, and you saw the visible pain. I always wondered. The contrast. So we don't know the Rebbe's mysterious ways, but I can tell you, when I experienced my own tragedy, my father passed away 15 years ago. Chafir, Tafshin, Samachay. So I remember thinking that maybe the Rebbe, as a real Rebbe, wasn't just with us in good times. He showed, I'm with you also in pain. I too, I'm also with you when it's difficult times. And it gave me strength because I saw that, it's like having the Rebbe with you, having a great man like that with you. And the Rebbe didn't understand. The neshama lives on, all the explanations of Chassidus, the Chiyas HaMesim, the end of the story will be good. We have all the strengths. Of course, the Rebbe knew that. He taught it every day. But still, when a heart cries, it heart cries. The way God made it, that when a soul separates from the body, even the greatest tzaddik, even the greatest Rebbe will cry. And he should cry. Because even that 1 second disconnect is something to cry over. So we cry. But it's not a contradiction to Targud V'Zangut because we know there's a bigger story. I may not feel it right now. My heart is bleeding. My heart is crying. But it's there. The story is there. And history tells us that there's a bigger story. And I know I have all the strengths. So at that time, we have to really gather those strengths, hold on strongly. It's not easy. So the third element is continuing to think in that positive way. That man I spoke about earlier with 5 little children, what did he do? Him and the immediate family, they brought up their children with such pride and with such dignity and nobility that the children never felt that they were at loss. Of course, they grew up without a mother, but those children grew up with a confidence because around them they saw positive thinking. They saw Chassidish people who were committed to the cause, to not allow yourself to get in the way, to realize there's a bigger story. We have all the strengths we need, and we will not become victims. We suffer, but we don't become sufferers. We're not defined by our experiences. Our negative experiences don't define our identities. Trach gut wenn sein gut is a declaration and a statement that I am a positive person. I'm a loving person. And there's nothing in life that's going to make me less loving and less kind and less compassionate and less giving. Yes, I'll cry. I'll complain. I will tell you that there's a lot of pain. There's a lot of hurt. The wounds are there, but I am not defined by my wounds. I'm not going to go around saying I'm a wounded cripple. No, you're not a wounded cripple. You're a chelik elokam emal mamish. You're a soul, a divine soul with all the strengths you need, and recognizing there's a bigger picture, which you may see at times and often you won't see. And that is your navigational tool to swim ahead, to forge ahead with full confidence, with full strength, with full self-esteem, to know that nothing will vanquish me. And if something is broken, it only makes me stronger. Because if it wasn't broken in the first place, we don't know how we would deal with it. You could say this way or that way, but once it's broken, and you see, not only have you survived, you've endured, you've thrived, then you become stronger in the broken places. Fundamental principle of Chassidus. There's a halach in Gemara that talks about this. It's called Shtar Sheyotza Lav Irur. Make a contract with someone. Okay, it's a contract. Then somebody challenges this contract, and it's upheld in court. Then it can never be challenged again. So you see, the irur, the challenge, is what makes this contract forever, endure forever. You can never challenge it again. So if a person hasn't gone through a difficulty, you could say, we don't know what will happen when they do. When something has been broken, something has been lost, something has been in any way compromised, and you come away stronger from that, that's indestructible. That's why Yom Kippur is the holiest day in the year. Why is Yom Kippur the holiest day in the year? Because it came after a break. When God gave the Jewish people the Torah, that was Shavuos. Then we still don't know. They're not tested. 39 days later, unfortunately, they built a golden calf. A golden calf, idolatry, complete betrayal of God. Moshe lets them have it, but then he marches up. He breaks the tablets. Another break. He breaks the contract, as Rashi explains, to show that the Jews didn't fully accept the contract. They didn't receive it. He breaks the tablets, marches back up, spends 40 days beseeching God to forgive the people. He's not successful. He goes up another 40 days. Rosh Chodesh comes down when? Yom Kippur. And this time he's successful. As we say right after Kol Nidre Yom Kippur, what do we say? Salachti kidvarecha. God said, I've forgiven as you've spoken. Moshe Rabbeinu prevailed over God who refused to forgive. And what happens? Once that happens, it's indestructible. So God and the people were married at Sinai. Marriage. Then the marriage was challenged. And what happened? Once it was upheld, once it was broken, and then fixed, tshuva, return, repair, then it's indestructible. Stronger in the broken places. That's the power we have. Now, we would love that it shouldn't be broken in the first place. Who wants any break? Who wants to have any wound? But things happen in a mysterious way. We don't understand why. So now we have only one option: to become stronger in that broken place, to become a stronger spirit, stronger will, stronger power, and to achieve things you never would have achieved had there not been a break in the first place. Yom Kippur gives us the birth of hope. The birth of hope that even when something may have not worked out, there was a betrayal, there was a violation, there was some way love was lost, love is regained in a way that you can never lose it again. So there we have it, 3 powerful, yes, indestructible tools to building resilience. Knowing there's a bigger picture, a longer story, the narrative. The end of the story is Mashiach, of course, where it all come together and we'll understand in retrospect everything that did happen. Eich Hashem kenafta be, even the painful experiences. Number two, that we have every strength and all the resources necessary to get through anything. Something comes your way, you have absolutely all the strength. And number three, as a result of that, we think positive all the time. There's a positive force at work. Sometimes we see it, sometimes we don't. And that positivity, that changes our situation. It's like when you see someone who has friends and loved ones and they come visit them in the hospital, God forbid, or when they're not well, that builds your immunity because you feel there are people who love you, people who believe in you. So you have the fight. It helps you have the fight in you and the immunity to fight your illness. God forbid somebody who's alone, no gifts, no guests, no visitors. You can imagine it's demoralizing. So the positivity, the tachgut v'tzangut, thinking positive based on the fact that there's a bigger story and we have the faculties and resources, those three, you incorporate that in life. Whatever we go through, you will not only be able to endure, but you'll be able to thrive. Kasher yano esam, as we're told in the beginning of the book of Exodus, when the Jews, as they were afflicted, as they were oppressed, ken yirbe v'chen yifritz, in direct proportion to their oppression, they thrived and they flourished. So I say to Reisel's family, to the Zucker family, to the Mochkin family, to all extended family, friends, all of those that are here with us now, all of us that will be listening to this program, we have tremendous strengths. May Reisel's neshama, who's definitely with us, she sees us even though we cannot see her, may give you all strength. She recognizes, as the Rebbe writes in some of his letters, she recognizes the pain of her family. She recognizes it and prays for us and gives you strength, especially to her children. A mother cries for her children. But crying is not just out of the pain and tears. It's also crying that gives strength to discover those deeper strengths that we really have, to recognize the larger narrative, and to live positive, upbeat lives, to make her proud until the day, B'kar Mamish, when we're zeicher, when we merit to be reunited with Reisel, with all our loved ones, with the Rebbe, and we'll finally see with our own eyes the big picture and recognize how it was all part of one large narrative that concludes in the most beautiful and most magnificent and most eloquent way. A world that will be filled with divine knowledge as the waters cover the sea, a world that will have no longer evil and destruction. U'macha Hashem as dimo ma'al kol panim, God will erase, wipe away the tears from all faces. We'll see how the tears that we reap, that we sow in tears, Berina Yukatseru, how we will reap with joy. Simchas Elam al Resham, a joy, a eternal joy, that will be the fundamental ingredient of our lives, the Geula Amitis V'Ashlema. I thank you again for the honor of sharing a few words, the covet and the memory of Reisel. And may God bless you all, and God bless us all, get through this pandemic and all the challenges we're facing now with the same strengths. We will endure, we will thrive, and we will lead us to the Geula Hamitis V'Ashlema. Thank you so much.